Alright guys, welcome back to another Tim Cain reaction. This time, game development as a family car trip. I wonder where the designers are sitting. I bet it's... game designers? I bet they're riding shotgun, if I had to guess. Yeah, there's a lot of responsibilities as a game designer.
Hi everyone, it's me, Tim, and
Hi
today I'm
Tim.
going to talk about game development as a family car trip.
Yeah.
Bear with me on this.
Okay.
I've done a lot of talking about game development over the last couple years. I've talked about teams and how to organize them and how to look for good team members. I've talked about game directors and how to be a good one and pitfalls of being a game director. I've talked about design pillars. I've even dived in like intent, like this is people's intent in making a game as opposed to people's interpretation. I've even
Good one.
tried to explain
Are
how
we there
design
yet?
choices are even made at the most fundamental level. And all those videos are linked below. There's a bunch of them. But that's a lot to take in, especially if you aren't in the game development industry. And a lot of people here have said either they're not in it in the game dev business, but they want to get into it, or they're not in it at all. They just like hearing about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of I think obfuscated responsibilities of game developers, especially ones that aren't so obvious. Like if you know a 3D artist makes the meshes, right? I mean that's pretty obvious. Or a level designer designs the levels. Though I do know people that mistake level design with level art, and I think there's a lot of ones like game design or producer that are very. If you aren't familiar with game development, you don't really know what these people do, and it can be very difficult to explain your job role to people not in the industry as like a designer or producer.
And as the summer months approached, I started thinking of this analogy. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this is a really good analogy for game development because it mimics a lot of the stages. So instead of game development, think about when you are taking a family vacation in your car somewhere. You've probably done this. If you haven't, you've almost certainly watched movies that involve this. There's a ton of movies that are just here's a family taking a car trip, whether it's
Yeah, dad's driving, mom is yelling that you're going the wrong way or you missed an exit. The kids are in the back, they turn the light on, and it's nighttime and your dad thinks that the world is going to explode because you pressed the light for like 2 seconds. And then you're arguing with your brother or sister about what music to play. The usual family car trip, right?
it's you know vacation or whether it's Little Miss Sunshine or whatever. You've certainly seen it. And I those a family trip in a car corresponds to a lot of the stages of production of a video game. By the way, there's a video below too for what the different stages are for video game production. So let's talk about it. I think there's four big chunks about a family car trip. There's that part when you first start talking about taking the trip
The pre-production.
and all the things you do before you actually get in the car.
Yeah.
This corresponds to game development pre-production. So usually one or both parents will decide on the destination. That's kind of what a game director does. It's very high level. You're just saying, you know what? We're going to go take a family trip to Las Vegas. Or we're going to take a family trip to Disneyland. Or maybe it's even vaguer than that. We're going to go to the beach. We're going to do a beach vacation this summer.
Which beach?
Doesn't really necessarily narrow down the beach, which beach,
Right.
but it's going to be a beach vacation.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, this is kind of the genre that we want, or we see a lot of players are playing, cooperative multiplayer games on Steam. Let's make something like that. Maybe it fits in our wheelhouse, or we just had a game jam where we prototyped some multiplayer activities and we feel confident jumping into learn more about that and do some, figuring out of what we want to make. You might even do a game jam to figure out your destination, right? Which could be like, hey, where would you want to go if you had the choice? Son of mine or daughter of mine? Pre-production.
I've been
The
in
general
many
direction.
game development kickoff meetings that are equally vague. And then the route is discussed. Okay, how long are we actually going to spend driving? Because remember, time on the road is also money on the road.
Yep.
And more time you spend on the road means less time you spend at the destination.
Well, especially if you're like in the US or you're going like a long distance, you would have to stay at a hotel, overnight, and that costs money, and you have to pay for the food between that. Also, the gas, gasoline's expensive.
So you talk about, okay, we're going to take this road because it's more scenic, or we're going to take this road because it's more direct, or we're going to take this road because it goes through the mountains, which will just be different. We've never done a mountain, we've never driven through the mountains, or we're not going to do the mountains because it could have snow there, and maybe we should go around it even though it'll take a little longer. These are kind of the things you discuss before you ever get in your car, or your parents discussed it, and it's very similar to what you do in pre-production.
Well, I'll add, Tim, you should discuss it. I've been parts of teams that do not discuss it very well, and they're like, oh, dude, it would be so cool to go to the mountains. And then they pack, like, no hiking gear or, like, survival kit or first aid kit in their car. And then they get there and they're like, oh, yeah, we were supposed to hike, but we don't have a first aid kit. Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? Yeah, or no water. So really, it's like you should discuss where you're going to go on the car trip, and you should prepare accordingly. I've been part of some car trips that did not prepare accordingly for that, and by that I mean like games, right?
How are we going to put this together? What engine are we going to use? Who's going to be, who are we going to get on the team, and what are the pros and cons of what we can do based on all of that? You also talk about what stops you're going to make along the way. Once you pick a route, you may go, there's a lot of interesting things along that route that maybe we should stop and see. Now, sometimes there will be consensus. Everyone in the family, everyone on the dev team, agrees on the stops you should make. Everybody wants to see that big thermometer. Everybody wants to see that scenic vista.
Are these equating to features?
Sometimes, though, your parents just have to decide and go, either there's too many stops being proposed, and it's like, we're not going to spend 4 days to do this 2-day drive.
Too much content.
They want to do something like, I know you guys are going to like this, even though none of you want to do it. We're going to go see the Hoover Dam because we're in Las Vegas, and it's educational, and we're going to go look at the dam. It also might be, and this is where kids and game developers alike don't like to think about it, but there also has to be a limitation based on budget. So you may decide you're going to take a family trip to Disneyland, but there may not be money for both parks. If you don't go to Disneyland a lot, you may not realize there's Disneyland and then California Adventures, and they are separate parks, and they have separate costs to enter. Now, you can spend more money and get a park hopper pass, which is cheaper than buying a pass for each one, but it's also, you've got to use it in one day. So you have 1 day to go to both parks, and trust me, you will probably be spreading yourself thin if you try to do both parks in 1 day. But
I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, it's kind of bait. I don't think we ever. I've been to Disney World a couple times. Don't buy the park hoppers. You're gonna spend so much time in one park. No reason to have it. Spending some extra time in preparation can save a lot of time later. It feels like you're wasting time and money at that stage, but that amount you can save there's immeasurable. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I think there's a plateau to the amount of help that pre-production can provide, but the better you do your pre-production, the more boring your alpha and beta are going to be, because it's kind of just simple. It's like, okay, we know what we need to do. Yep, it costs this much money. There's nothing really, crazy or unexpected happening here. I mean, that's a good thing, right? But it can just be. You're right. I think that a lot of times that I've been in pre-production in different companies, you have better and worse experiences, and some of the worst experiences were ones where the higher ups would see pre-production as chaotic and not making progress. And it's like, no, we're making progress on figuring out how to do these things later on in development correctly. We're saving time by not having to refactor too much, or not having to discover that a feature we wanted was impossible to do that we could have discovered with 1 week of prototyping. So the planning stage is important here. The pre-production is very important.
That's the pros and cons of talking about that, and how much money you have, and how you want to spend it, and how fast you want to go through the park. That all corresponds to what you're doing pre-pro. Of what are we going to do? how much money do we have to spend? How much time do we spend in pre-pro versus how much time do we spend in production? And what are we actually going to do in production?
Relevant to
Very similar.
today's work.
So then you get to the actual development stage, which in the family vacation is you're now in the car and you're driving. You're going there. I guarantee what happens in game development happens in family vacations where you're driving along and somebody goes, "Can we stop here instead?" Maybe
Yeah. I gotta pee real quick, or I need a snack. Oh, Dad's getting tired. We need to stop at a different hotel than we expected.
someplace you were planning to go is closed.
Yeah.
You didn't know that. It's the off season. Or maybe it's a lot farther off the exit, or maybe that exit was closed, or maybe there's a detour,
Or you missed
or
the
maybe you
exit.
just noticed something along the way and you're like, "Hey, the world's largest ball of twine is off the next exit.
Ooh.
We should go take a look at that." Maybe you do.
Those are fun.
That's part of the fun of taking a
Yeah.
family trip. If you keep
we
it under
there yet?
control, if all you do is zigzag the whole way there, you're going to arrive at your destination without any time to do anything. But there's another thing that happens in both game dev and family trips: emergency pit stops. Maybe you have car trouble. No one plans on that. No one expects
shit,
it.
yeah.
But you blow a tire, you blow a transmission. These are things that you can't really predict, even if you had your car getting good maintenance, and you have to deal with on the road.
This is true. But I think that for the equation, and maybe he'll make this equation too. But for the equation to game dev, I think that there are some of these things that you can prepare for, and of course, if they happen, this is still a delay. But it's better to be caught out in the middle of nowhere with a spare tire than to be caught out in the middle of nowhere without a spare tire, or like a backup battery, worst case. So it's like, yeah, it's still going to be a delay if you have to change the battery, but at least if you have a battery there, you don't have to call up like a police officer or a tow truck to bring you one or something or whatever. So I think there's some things you can prepare for and that do minimize the delays. You can prepare for some of that, like, oh, well, let's just have this worst case scenario. But there are other things that you can prepare for, like, yeah, the transmission dies. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you can't have a spare transmission in your trunk or anything.
Or maybe you're just dealing with sickness. Maybe someone gets car sick and throws up. Happened in my family a lot.
Yep.
Maybe someone gets really sick and starts running a fever and
Oh, God.
needs serious attention. You have to spend time on that. And that will take time and that will take money, which reduces the budget you have when you actually get to your destination. Keep in mind, kind of the rule here is not everything can be planned. I've met people who think everything can be planned in game development. You can't even plan everything on a 1-week family vacation using a car.
And the longer the production, the less you can predict. I mean, even today, it's like, okay, I think it'll take us 2 months to do this. And early in pre-production, I think we can kind of, we know what we need to do. It's a little bit more visible. But I don't know what the hell vertical slice is going to look like until we finish pre-production. That's why it's kind of useless to go too crazy with planning that. And I certainly don't know what our early access milestones are going to look like until we have our vertical slice. So the best I can do is put some estimates down of, using my best intuition of how long A, B, feature B, C might take. But it's all a question mark at this point. And the reason you do pre-production is to minimize your unknowns. And the more you minimize your unknowns and understand your solutions to implementing those, the better you can predict how much time and how many people are going to be needed, which of course then translates directly to money. So you have to do pre-production to understand the budget and the milestone plan a little bit, but you can do some initial analysis based on your expertise or previous experience with the genre or type of game that you're making. Yeah, you can't plan everything. The best you can do is plan up to a point and then say, well, past this point, it becomes very uncertain and we don't know.
You control in like a plane or a boat, because not everything can be planned, but guess what? Not everything should be planned.
True.
Maybe seeing the world's largest thermometer or stopping to seeing that giant ball of twine, maybe that turns out to be the highlight of your whole trip. It's what you and the kids remember for decades to come. Not Disneyland but the world's largest ball of twine.
Well, I mean, sometimes you can plan for that extra time of the spontaneous ideas that can come to, to the surface. But if you fail to plan enough time to allow that spontaneity, or you fail to do your pre-production properly, you might end up without that time anyway. So the best idea can appear, but if you have to be at your destination at a certain time of the day, it's like, okay, we would love to see it. There's no time. Like, we're already going to be running late to our destination. So unfortunately, we can't. It's just, let's save it for the next trip. Save it for the sequel.
You never know. And if you overplan,
Yeah.
you will never see that ball of twine. So let's talk about really fast.
Hold on. In VFX, we need to quote budgets before pre-production. Maybe that's why our industry is so messed. Well, it also happens in game dev. I mean, when I go to a publisher and I say, "Hey, here, look at our pre-production," a lot of times the publishers are seeing like just a pitch deck of like concept art in some cases. It's like, okay, so you don't have a prototype? No, that's what we need funding for. It's like, okay, so you don't even know what's going to be in your game yet, and you're giving me a budget for it. That's not really how that works. Thankfully, that is becoming less common, and they are expecting something playable and even ideally a vertical slice, which would give you, at least it should give you enough of an idea of what your production is going to look like. But, there's still so many unknowns in a 2 to 3 year production cycle.
No. And if you overplan, you will never see that ball of twine.
Yep.
So let's talk about really fast the development time itself, because that's equivalent to when your family finally arrives. You get to Disneyland, you get to the beach, you get to Las Vegas. Sure, there's a ton of excitement, because you're there. You get to do all these fun things. You get to get your vacation done.
Wait in lines.
And it took a long time to get there. Whether it took a day or two, or you stopped and saw more sites, took 3 or 4 days. It took a long time just to get to your vacation destination. Some people just want to relax poolside. Look, I'm just going to sit by the pool, soak up some sun. This is my vacation.
Imagine like paying for like Disneyland or Disney World, where the prices per ticket are pretty crazy, and just sitting in the water park, I don't know, watching overweight people in their t-shirts go up and down with the waves. Is that really worth the $200 per day? I don't know.
Soak up some sun. This is my vacation. Similar in game dev, they're like, I'm just going
worth
to
it to
implement
you?
the features
Okay.
that were assigned to me, and that's it. But some people are like, ooh, I want to run around. I want to see the sights. I want to do more. Game ships. Those are the people who like to look at the reviews. Some people are like, I'm done. I don't want to see it anymore. But a lot of people want to look at the reviews.
Reading reviews can be dangerous.
You
need to have the right mentality for it.
That end point in your vacation, when you're done, is equivalent to the ship. You've done it. You did the pre-pro. You developed here. You got to the vacation site. You ship. That's the ship point, is when you're actually at your vacation and it's the last day or two. So that brings us to the final phase, which in the family trip is you're headed back. You're all piling back in the car to drive home.
Randy doesn't
In
have
game
the
development,
mentality.
that's the phase after shipping where you patch. Everybody's tired. You've all been there.
Oh yeah.
You're tired.
But you
Some
have
people
to
want to talk about the trip on the way back. Hey, wasn't that fun when we did this? Hey, guess what? There's a couple more places we could catch that are just off the highway on our way home.
DLC.
And other people are like, no more sites. I just want to get home.
Well, here's the interesting thing about it is, yeah, I really love this analogy with that Tim is doing here. Something to note with like that initial patches and release is it is incredibly important to have a patch out fast and to be responsive about it, because it sends your first patch and your first communication to players does so much work to signal how you respond to feedback and to problems and whether or not you're actually paying attention to players. Super important to have it out and be very clear and concise. The interesting thing about the return trip in this analogy is that during the return trip, or even while you're actually almost at the destination, let's say Disneyland, you will have people in the car that need to be planning your second trip. because you have no time to go back home and sit and wait around because that costs money. So I wonder if he'll bring up like pre-production for game 2 because that usually should happen during like your beta of your first game or of the game that you're about to ship. You need to start moving core team members over, usually like a producer, a designer, and a programmer. Maximum, maybe a couple more people depending on what the idea is, and start pre-production of the second game so that when the first game is done shipping, you can then finish up with pre-production of game number 2 and then move the team over to enter production for it. Ideally. So that way you don't waste a lot of money and developer time. Family has a rule that we spend more on accommodation than we spend on travel costs. Flying from Australia is expensive, so we have long holidays or we stay at super nice places. I think that's nice. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like especially like if you're going over to like overseas or something, why would you ever spend like 2 days there when the plane tickets are, like $1,000? Like, no, I'm spending 2 weeks there minimum.
I want to get home. We'll start talking about the next vacation in a few weeks. Those are the different people that happen in the patch phase. Some people are like, let's dive in and fix everything that people are talking about in reviews.
You
Other
need
people
both.
are like, can we just put that in the sequel?
Yeah, you need both.
Can we move on? Again, the same constraints. For the family, when you're driving back, you have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of money. You usually have to be back in a certain amount of time, and you know what that time is. And you only have so much money left in your vacation budget because you know what you've already spent on the way here and at your destination. Same thing in the patch phase. You've got so much money and so much time, and then you got to be done. At some point, you have to put a pin in it and say, that game is done. I envy games that keep doing production after it ships. Usually they have a big war chest of money, meaning it's a wealthy family that can keep doing things whenever they want.
Or live service.
Or it's a subscription model, so they're getting paid
Yeah.
regularly, and they're updating the game regularly. I don't know what that's like. Maybe that's a timeshare condominium. I don't even want to, I'm stretching the analogy too far. And then what's interesting about this is after the family trip, some people in the family loved it, some people didn't. Years later, very different memories of the same trip. Some people only remember the big ball of twine. Some people only remember your sister who threw up in the back seat. That's why your parents are always happy they took photos, and it's why I'm glad I took notes, because you can actually look back at what really happened, the events at least. You can look at those events. Maybe you didn't get a picture of people crying over the horrible dinner you had that one night, or people getting angry in the car that you didn't stop at this one thing, but at least you have photos of the things that actually happened.
Yeah, ideally you don't want photos of the bad moments, but no, I mean, yeah, I think Tim had a video about like a career, what was it, job, career, calling, I think was specifically the terms that he used. I could be getting one of those wrong. Yeah, I mean, there are people that are just there and they're there to do their tasks. They're not really there to work too hard or to fix the game and make it better for people. It's like, oh, I got paid to work on this game. What's the next game you're going to pay me to work on? I think you having those kinds of individuals are useful for some of the larger teams, but for smaller teams, I don't think that those people have too much of a. You usually wouldn't hire those for small teams or for indie studios. Photos of only the bad moments. I mean, but analyzing the bad moments is important too. So, like, when you get back home, I don't know if he'll make this analogy, but when you get back home, you want to analyze, like, how did we do with the planning of the trip? Did we plan it correctly? Did we prepare enough, emergency materials in the back seat? Should we have brought a towel so that if somebody throws up in the car, we can try to clean it up with relative ease, or some wet wipes or something, or some motion sickness pills is a good one. That's something that my mom always brought on trips because she has motion sickness. So, you do those kinds of things, which would be the post-mortem or a retrospective, and those are very helpful.
So I've worked on a lot of games where there was no itinerary formally discussed, but everybody kind of wanted to go to the same place. This is Fallout. Now, even though there was all that consensus and we didn't really decide where we're going, there were still some places we argued about, do we really want to go here? Like the timer in the game. I've also worked on games where the itinerary was laid out, but people still wanted to go different places despite what we had discussed where we're going to go. This happened a little bit in Arcanum, I talked about our
To be fair, I think that there's like a positive and negative to that. I see people who it's easy to happen. Tim's got the right face for it here. It's easy to be building a game and have some really passionate, cool idea. I've done it, especially as a junior, when you don't understand all of the like bits and bobs of game development, or the idea that you have to stop working at this game on this game at some point and then work on the next one, or it would require so much refactoring to make this idea that it's just not financially viable to do so right now. And it's important to have somebody in leadership who can quell that when it needs to be quelled without telling somebody that their idea is like bad, or making them unwanting of putting out their ideas in the future for future games. I didn't word that very well, but you can't just take every side trip, because then you'll never reach your destination, right? Or you'll spend too much money and you won't have any money to actually pay for the gas to reach your destination. So you have to kind of pick and choose your battles here, or do pre-production well enough that you have that chaotic ideation at the start of the project, and then just be like, no, we need to stop. You need a leader who's good at herding cats. Yeah, you need somebody who's like, look, great idea, too expensive, let's save it for number 2. When junior, after watching a couple YouTube videos, start teaching me how to do my job, I start wanting some blood. Yeah, that can happen too. Well, I followed one tutorial. That means I know everything about this topic now. I watched a video about game design. That means I can be a game designer.
I talked about our original design had all kinds of cool things in it, and one of the major chunks of the game, which was the tech skills, got redesigned into tech schematics. Mm-hmm. But that was just a little bit. It happened a lot on the Outer Worlds, because on Outer Worlds, we decided ahead of time what we were going to do. But then as we got the team together, we saw what we could, extra things we could do, and things that we couldn't do. And then there were people who were like, I know we're, 80% of the way into the game, but we need to do A, B, and C as well. And like I said, a lot of times those decisions come from above you or from the publisher. But occasionally it came from inside the team. We're like, look, we just can't do this. I know we said we were going to do this. We can't do this. So it happens in games as well.
It's a little bit scary with a publisher, because when you get a publishing deal, you're selling your game to somebody else, and then they are contracting you to make that game. So when you tell them that something you sold them on, the reason that they bought your game, or one of the reasons, cannot be included in that game, you never know what you're going to be met with. If it's going to be like okay, or we're going to need this and we're not going to fix the milestones, so you're going to have to find a way to implement it. Or, ideally it's like, okay, well, we still need this. We'll move the milestone by a month. Don't worry. And we'll still pay you for that month that we need to move it. So, it is what it is. It's just, you never know what you're going to be met with, and you might have bad leadership that cannot be open and honest with a publisher. I've experienced that, let's say. And when you are lying or miscreating, or let me reword this. When you are implementing a prototype or MVP version of a feature and selling it to the publisher as this is the completed version of this feature, totally don't look into our code. That's tech debt that you have to pay back, and that ultimately is going to be paid by the team members who have to do overtime or crunch. And yeah, I want to avoid that. Absolutely, I want to avoid that. You see the Subnautica 2 debacle? I did. But I see both sides saying things, and I don't know who to believe in that debacle. I really don't know who to believe. It'll come out in the court case.
But then I've worked on games where there was absolutely zero itinerary, and no one wanted to go to the same places.
Oh boy.
Nobody could even agree who was going to drive the car.
Oh god.
That was WildStar. You could still end up maybe having a fun vacation.
Rip WildStar.
You got to kind of
I like
lean
WildStar.
back and go with the flow. or you could have the worst vacation in your family's history. Who knows how that's going to turn out? It's not even well controlled chaos. And there's one more. People ask me about solo development all the time. I've never done a solo vacation, which would be the equivalent of solo development. The advantages, of course, is you can go wherever you want, you can stop wherever you want, and you can change up things as you go along. For some people, that is the most awesome form of vacation slash game development you could ever do. For other people, it's kind of lonely not to share an experience like
I think
that
it's
with other
lonely.
people.
Yeah.
Also, there may be some things you can't do by
Same.
yourself. You're not going to be doing that tandem bike ride through the streets of Paris by yourself.
I just find it better as a designer to work with other people because I inevitably have tunnel vision towards my own directions that I'm looking, and all it takes is one what if or one idea from chat or from Rex or from Cuthbert to make me look someplace new. And I really appreciate that. Looking forward to that conversation when we learn enough of what the fuck is really going on.
I know this isn't a perfect analogy, but there's a lot of people who watch this channel who said they may never do development, and I thought, okay, this this gives you a little taste of what it's like, and also if you've already done development, maybe this will make you think of the whole process a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really been teaching me a lot. I know Rex is pretty new to game dev as a whole, but for me, who's worked on 3 games that have been released commercially, even releasing Coin Pusher Reloaded was just a massive learning experience for things that I never had to do in my career, and it's been great. I've been really learning a lot, and so we're gonna continue to learn more with Coin Pusher Realms. I'm looking forward to working more with Rex on that and seeing if we can push our capabilities even further. Need a couple 2x4 in your shoes and you can ride that tandem bike solo. I don't know. I respect solo developers who do some crazy stuff, but at the same time, I do feel it's lonely, and I like working with somebody who brings their own set of skills, specialization, and passion to the table. Because I'm not passionate about art. I'm not. And because I'm not passionate and I'm not skilled, I will never be able to produce as good of results as somebody who is skilled and is passionate about that. I just won't. And I just don't think it's worthwhile for me to learn how to do that when I prefer working in teams. I like working with other people. I like not dealing with other people's bullshit. Well, if you look, you can make successful games as a solo developer. You can make successful games as a team. They're both thankfully true. Like dealing with IGDB. Yep, dealing with IGDB, dealing with the localization. I've never had to do that before, and that was an interesting experience. Gamepad with the UI. Never again. But yeah, no, it's good. It's just it does make me more valuable in the future too, because if I want to go back to a team environment and work as, let's say, like a lead designer again, which I would like to do maybe, then I can better communicate with programmers, with UI programmers, with UI designers, with the sound designers, with the producers, with QA, because now I have more experience doing some of their work, and I can better communicate exactly what we're looking for, the tools that we have used maybe in the past, or if they need to step out, like a producer needs to go on a vacation or get sick, and they were the ones responsible for talking with localizers or preparing a spreadsheet with context. I know how to do that because I've done that before. And so it just makes me more valuable, even though I'm still specialized as a game designer, as a systems designer. I don't know. We'll see what the future holds, right? Some pictures of my old theater crew, and I'm still mad at the bullshit they pulled. I don't know if I can go back to teams for a long time. Well, yeah, sometimes teams can, yeah, break trust, yeah. Yeah. Finding a good team is hard. But I think it's more worthwhile to find people that you work well with, and who are good people, than it is to find people who are super experienced and are bad teammates. Either way, that was a great video. Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate that. Keep it up, my man. I really appreciate it, and then we'll try to reach out to Tim this year and see if we can get him on for a talk on stream. I know I keep saying that. I will. I promise I will do that this year. Okay, or maybe next year, but sometime. Either way, guys, go give Tim a like for this video. Give him a subscription if you haven't already. Thank you so much, Tim, for making that. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll catch you on the next one. Bye bye, YouTube.